Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another Free Real Estate Advice Friday. This is episode number 58. So, a lot to talk about. The market is, what's a good word to describe this market? Unpredictable, definitely frantic. Rates are up. There's a lot going on out there. So let's talk about a few of those things. Before I do, let's check the rate for today. It was up a little bit last week. It's back down a little bit. It's hovering around 6.9 ish. So we saw a little bump over the past 2 weeks. I think the general consensus is we are still expecting this to go down. The date that I've been given is May 15th, I believe, that we'll see a pretty major adjustment. Should see an adjustment before then, but then a major adjustment then. That's what the experts are telling me. That is not my advice or any sort of crystal ball situation. That is simply what the experts that I work with are telling me. So we are still expecting that to happen. But yeah, it's pretty crazy out there. I mean, the thing that dictates this market most is not just the rates. It's definitely a variable. It's definitely causing a lot of confusion in the current market. But what's causing most of the activity in this market is the lack of inventory. And that has really remained the case for the past few years, but it really isn't changing. Anecdotally, like in my business, I am starting to see a little more inventory hit the market, but nothing crazy. But, it is spring market. It is where we are approaching spring market. So, there's always, we have these conversations about what's going on with the market, but there is always that seasonal overlay. So, seasonally speaking, we are coming into a time of year where we're going to see increased inventory, regardless of what's going on, because a lot of people have waited until now to get their homes on the market. So, you should continue to see that to some degree over the next few months. To what degree is what I think we're all asking ourselves, including someone like me who's making a living based on that inventory showing up. So, um, it'll be an interesting few months to see how this all plays out, as far as the interest rates and the inventory. If those two things happen simultaneously, we see an increased level of inventory as well as the rates coming down. Listen, it's probably going to be a pretty active market. But I think there are so many unknowns right now that we're not quite sure. When we started talking about the rates going down from back in September, October, when things were around 8%. And since then, I've kind of pointed out that just because rates are trending down doesn't mean we're going to see these little bumps. So I think what happens a lot is that those little bumps put people back into a mindset that, oh God, rates are not getting better, but they are definitely trending downwards. But we are going to, it's not going to be just a linear line. It's going to have some bumps. So hopefully that's what that was the last 2 weeks. Like I said, it's already kind of gone down again. So we'll see what happens. Wanted to give a couple plugs up front for local businesses, as I always do. Last week was my birthday week, so I got to do a couple activities on my own, and as well as with my family, obviously. But I did a couple. I took a Saturday to myself to do a couple things that I've been wanting to do. But one of the places that I've plugged on here multiple times before, I am almost always wearing their clothes because it's where I get most of my clothes. But Shaded Vision in Lavallette, New Jersey, right on Central Ave. If you are ever down in that area, awesome store. I've been going there for probably close to 20 years. I mean, as long as they've been there. I remember when they opened, and the guy who runs it, Tyler, just has a great way of curating great clothes. It's not a huge shop, but he definitely is always on the cutting edge of putting out some great clothes. The shirt I'm wearing is from there, and like I said, 90% of my clothes come from there. So I always like to give him a plug. I know he's been through a few struggles just because of hurricanes and because of COVID, obviously. So I just like to plug it, and I want good things for Tyler. He's a great guy, has definitely has skill in putting together a great shop, but also I buy all my clothes there. So I would like to stay open and everyone share in that enjoyment and continue to turn over inventory and everything else that comes with running a small business. I also am a self-employed person, so I definitely want to try and help out other fellow self-employed people whenever I can. So shaded vision, shaded like think sunglasses. That's, I think, the intent of the name. So shaded vision in Lavallette, New Jersey. Also wanted to plug that same day, I was able to go to the Raritan Bay Guitar Show, as most of you probably don't know, and you shouldn't know that I play guitar. And in addition to just playing guitar, I'm a huge just gearhead and all things guitar, amps and guitars and whatnot. I'm always kind of, um, you know, changing things and trading things and selling things and buying things. I just move a lot of equipment, and I got to go to the Raritan Bay Guitar Show. And I wanted to plug Clinton Guitars here in Clinton, New Jersey, because I had actually heard about the guitar show and decided that I was like, maybe I'll check that out. But, going somewhere on a Saturday is always tough, especially in tax season, because my wife's an accountant that I generally am watching the kids. So I wasn't necessarily planning on going, but we were able to work it out that I was like, you know what? I have a couple hours. I'm going to take a ride down there. And I went and took a ride down there. And in the meantime, while I was still kind of thinking about it, Roger here at Clinton Guitars, I had picked something up from him that week, and he said, "Oh, actually, I'm doing a guitar show this week," and he mentioned Raritan Bay Guitar Show, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I did see that," and I was thinking about going. So, once he said he was going, I was like, "All right, I'll go check it out." And what ended up happening was, I wasn't really planning on buying anything. I just, I like to look at interesting guitars and build my knowledge of gear and all that stuff, see weird stuff. And, guitar shows are great for that, because you're not going to a guitar store where they, they're a dealer for a couple different brands, but they have all kinds of bizarre stuff and, kind of fun. It's not a huge guitar show, but Roger was going to be there. So I walked the whole place and didn't, again, I wasn't really looking for anything, but then I did stumble across something that was very intriguing to me. It was a good deal. I was able to negotiate a good price. Negotiating is something that I do occasionally. So I was able to negotiate a good price on this guitar. And who's two tables down from where I'm looking at this guitar is Roger. So Roger was there and he looked it over for me to just validate my purchase. And Roger's a great guy. I absolutely love going with him, and he's just fun to chat with, and he's very knowledgeable. And he's here in Clinton, so if you need something locally, there aren't many options around here for guitar service or guitar purchases. And definitely go see Roger. He's always got pretty cool stuff as far as sales go, but he's great with repairs if you need anything done to guitars. And like I said, there's like very few people around here that do that. So check out Clinton Guitars. Last but not least, I stopped by Metropolitan Seafood today, another business I have plugged multiple times on here. They are in Annandale, New Jersey. If you're from Hunter County, you definitely know Metropolitan Seafood. I mean, they're an institution at this point. I've been going there since I was a little kid. But I stopped in there today to grab lunch, which was delicious. I had the poke bowl, which they do a great job with, but their daily takeout specials are phenomenal all the time. But they are having a Mardi Gras event tomorrow. They have a special menu from 2 to 10 p.m. and they have live music, and they're out in the pavilion there, if you're familiar with that setup. They're also doing takeout for all the specials as well. So if you are around Hunterdon County tomorrow, then definitely go check out Metropolitan Seafood's Mardi Gras. It's definitely going to be a hoot. If you don't get their emails, you should join their email list, because their emails are extremely entertaining. And then you have, eyes on all the specials and everything. They do a great job with their email. They're actually, as someone who dabbles in sending out like weekly newsletters and stuff like that, they're fantastic with their email marketing. They're also Mark, the owner of Metropolitan Seafood, is also pretty big on Instagram and TikTok and all those things. I think primarily Instagram. But if you ever get a chance to see his Instagram videos, he does an awesome job, and he has like 250,000 followers or something like that. Don't quote me on that. I haven't looked it up in a minute, but he has like a crazy amount of followers. So it's kind of fun to see someone that I've known since I was a little kid really kind of get his well-deserved attention that he's getting. So Metropolitan Seafood in Annandale, New Jersey. That's a business when people move from out of the area. I love telling them about Metro Seafood. There's no one beats them. So, all right, let's get into real estate. So a couple things I wanted to talk about today. Market's been quite crazy. It's an interesting time to be a real estate agent. It's an interesting time to be a buyer. It's an interesting time to be a seller. The market is just frantic. So, I, again, speaking anecdotally, I made some changes to my business based on the fact that over the past 6 months or so, it's just been slow. It's really hard out there for real estate agents. If you're working with buyers, and I generally am, um, it's just hard to get people homes these days. So, that's what I depend on to feed my family. So, it can be scary when things are tough and, everywhere you go, you're making, multi-bid offers. Um, I've been able to listen, I've been able to survive. I'm not complaining too much, but it's not a steady paycheck by any means. And it's not, sometimes it can be a little stressful. So I made some changes to my business over the past 6 months to kind of avoid that. Basically, I decided to just work harder and do a little bit, do things a little bit different in terms of generating new business. So in terms of my business, things are fine. In fact, I'd say they're actually pretty excellent. But what's going to be interesting, and I'm actually going to get into this a little bit. Um, what's going to be interesting is, well, you know what? Let me give this some additional context and get into my talking points, because I'm going to tell you why this is going to be interesting. So buying in the current market, um, I have a bunch of buyers right now that have pending deals and great. Two pretty unique situations. One was your traditional multi-bid situation, 9 offers, and we were able to get our offer accepted. I'm not going to get into the details of that. It was not necessarily highest price. It was a combination of things that, we were able to get our offer accepted. I don't want to give away all my trade secrets on here, but just, it was a very strategic process, as it always is with me. And I think that those strategies always pay off. It's nothing diabolical or underhanded. It's actually very straightforward. It's just kind of about, selling them basically on my professional reputation, which I stand by, and putting together an airtight offer. Obviously the terms have to be good as well, but there also has to be confident on the selling side in the terms that we're offering. So they have to be confident that, I know what I'm doing, that the offer is solid. There are no errors or flags or anything in there that is going to cause stress down the road. And then, from there, it's the process that I do to kind of sell them on, my professional reputation, as well as the strength of the offer and how thorough we'll be throughout the process. In a nutshell, that's basically what it is. It's not fancy or anything. It's just airtight. It's very well developed and thought out, strategic. It's not much more than that. Are there a couple other things I do, to kind of, wrap it all up and make it look pretty? Sure. And those are the things I won't get into, but at the end of the day, that's it. So the other situation we had is a really interesting situation, where, and again, whenever I'm talking about a current deal, I always want to kind of be careful about what I say. I am not trying to insult anyone or anything like that, but this other one was a kind of a unique situation where, a combination of how it was listed and how it was marketed, and the home itself is fairly unique. And it had been on the market for 6 months. And I know the reasons behind that. I won't get into all the details of it, but what I will say is this. In this market, you have to be fairly persistent and maybe even open-minded about certain situations. Now, we're in like the biggest sellers market that's ever existed in the history of real estate, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, at least in the past 4 years. So, which is crazy because, what was happening at the beginning of COVID, actually it happened right before COVID, was, everything blew up as we know it today. The crazy market that we're talking about really started then. And that's when we started seeing these, situations with 25 offers and whatnot. And at the time, that was pretty much unheard of, at least in a very long time, way before I was in real estate. So we're kind of back in that territory now. I will say it's a little bit lighter. In the local markets, Hunterdon, Warren, it's people are definitely going over asking for the most part, but nothing crazy. There was a time period there where it really was kind of crazy around here. I will say in surrounding more populated counties, Union County, Passaic, Middlesex, Somerset, it's still pretty crazy. People going way over asking, waiving things, stuff like that. I will say in Hunterdon and Warren, we're not seeing as much of the waiving things. But like I said, this one that we're active on now, I mean, we were the only offer. We walked into this house, and I think we all had, I was curious. I don't think I really had any expectations. I'm kind of used to this. I'm used to not setting expectations for houses I visit. And again, the way it was listed was a little ambiguous. So I didn't really have any expectations for the visit, but I will say the second I walked into the door, I said, this is really nice. This is a really, really nice place. There really wasn't anything for me that was like, whoa, I see why it's been on the market for 6 months. There were some details about the seller's motivations. That's, again, not going to get into all the details of it, but there were some things. It wasn't just, it was just on the market for 6 months. But listen, when you are sitting on the market for 6 months, things are going to get kind of interesting because a lot of people like that may be less experienced or whatnot. I shouldn't even say that because actually a lot of experienced agents would kind of pass over that because they're going to assume it's problematic. So, but I do have to credit my buyers for saying, you know what, we're pretty open minded. I know these buyers well enough at this point. I said they are pretty open minded. I have an idea of what they're looking for. And this did check off a lot of those boxes, even though I had a low expectation for what the actual result of that visit would be. I knew they were pretty open minded about what they were looking for, but they did want certain things, and this had those certain things. They're just very easy to work with too, which always helps. So we went there, and I think we all stepped in the front door, and we're basically like, "Wow, this place kind of blows us away." So in this market, you got to kind of look at those things that we traditionally have said. For houses, for the past 2 years, if a house was on the market for 6 months, right off the bat, it's a huge red flag. I wouldn't say that I would necessarily like not show it or something, but I'm going to go in there pretty heavy handed on the due diligence. I did do some due diligence on this one beforehand, and I didn't see anything crazy. I did see some things that were question marks. Again, based on the way that it was listed. But I didn't see anything crazy going on. So I said, all right, well, might as well check it out. In this market, you got to check out everything. And it ended up being a home run. So I think the first lesson in this market is like, don't make any assumptions about what you're seeing because there could actually be opportunities hidden in there. And, whereas in previous markets or even just a buyer's market in general, you don't have to seek out opportunities. Opportunities are just all around you because, you're in the driver's seat, basically in a buyer's market, obviously. But in this market, you're not in the driver's seat. Everyone's looking for houses right now. They're really hard to find. And they're really hard to get. They're really hard to win those bids. So in this situation where my buyers were, kind of open-minded and just easygoing and said, "Hey, let's go take a look," and I'm down to go take a look, so let's go take a look, and it ended up being a home run. So it's an interesting thing as far as the attitude of buyers these days. I think so many people are just getting so discouraged, and I have to keep telling people over the past few years is like, it's so important that you don't do that. I know it's hard. And I actually have mentioned to these clients several times, as well as all my clients, is like, look, every transaction right now is super emotional on both sides because sellers have very high expectations for how this process is going to go for them. And whether they want to admit it or not, they're counting dollar signs before that house is even listed. Zillow doesn't help with this, with the Zestimate or any of the websites that offer these like automated valuations. Those valuations are typically, sometimes they happen to be accurate, but a lot of times, especially out here where it's a little more rural and there's less comparative properties and houses are a little more unique and property sizes vary quite a bit. Those values are, it's a total crapshoot. So, sellers see a high number. I've had this happen quite a bit recently. They see a high number and they start spending that money already. And when I get there for the listing appointment, I'm like, look, here's the comparables for things that have sold in the last 6 or sometimes even 3 months if it's a more populated area and I have a lot of comps. And like that number that you're seeing on the website, that's like not a realistic number. So just please be careful of that. And that's fine, but it's definitely a conversation that needs to be had. So you have that going on the seller side, and then the buyer side, they've probably whiffed on a few houses. They can't find anything and they really want to move and they just can't find anything. Plus they're dealing with probably their lender and locking in rates and stuff like that. So they're, in a high level, if they know they're paying like quote unquote top dollar for houses, they're just they're going to be diligent with inspections and everything else, and sellers are not getting, I hate to say it, but maybe getting a little greedy in terms of like, we know we're going to get top dollar, and we don't have to do anything because in this market we have so many buyers that we can just kind of do whatever we want. And it's really not always the case. I mean, if you have a problem at the house that needs to be repaired, it's going to probably come up with any buyer. People are waiving inspections. That is a thing. But if you're not in a situation where you've had that, like if you didn't get 25 offers in your house, then your expectation should not be that people are not going to get inspections and then ask for repairs. So again, you have these two like very emotional sides, and almost always it comes to being an emotional transaction, and then you have the professionals involved in it, myself and the attorney and the lender, who are pretty used to this at this point. I mean, we're very used to it at this point, quite honestly. It's every transaction nowadays. But if you can kind of be the Zen master of buying a house, you'll have a much better time, because there are times. I just closed a deal recently where there were a lot of like little things that came up. They were legit, they were totally legit things, but they were it was almost like a water torture situation where there were just like little things that kept kind of popping up and surprising everyone involved. And I think the seller essentially kind of checked out on us, like they just like couldn't take it anymore. And I did have to have a conversation with my buyer and say, listen, you love this house, and it's let's call it a $600,000 house. We're fighting here over $500. I get it. You're right. You're absolutely right. You're entitled to that money. But sometimes, you might just have to say, all right, whatever, I'll eat the 500. I know I'm right, but I'm going to eat the 500. It comes to that. What's interesting in some situations, and what happened in this deal, is we did kind of make that decision. We decided to eat the $500. And then what ended up happening is, about a few days later, we found a new situation that popped up, that something that had been promised to us earlier that was no longer in place. We realized it was missing an item. And we went back to the sellers and said, hey, sorry, we thought we had this all settled, but that thing that you said was staying here is no longer here. And now, guess what? We get to reference that other $500 we ate, because said, hey, look, we ate the $500, but this is absurd. So, we're asking for this. And, you get to, when the negotiation comes to that, you get to be a little more heavy handed, because you can reference that time you just ate the money and took the high road and say, but we're not taking the high road this time. This is clear as day. This was promised to us. So negotiations are interesting. Obviously, you can imagine the seller did not take that too well. And when they pushed back on us, our attorney stepped in and said, this is not going to go well for you, because this is a contractual situation. So, and a hat tip to my attorney for taking care of that, and really kind of putting a foot down at the appropriate time and saying, no, we can't just, take the high road on everything. Some things we are actually entitled to. So, it's just kind of crazy out there. It's very emotional. So how do you avoid that and be successful in this market? As a buyer, like I said, be that Zen master of the market. Be calm. Don't fall in love with any house until I call you and say, we got your offer accepted, because it's pointless at this point. Everything is multi-offers for the most part. Now, listen, locally here in Hunterdon and Warren, depending on price points and whatnot, it might only be 3 or 4 offers, and I'll take those odds any day of the week for me personally. As a professional, I have a good rate of getting those offers accepted. And, if you're up against cash, so be it. If you have cash, fantastic. But I'll take those odds. I mean, I think it's worth getting in the mix. I mean, sometimes I'll call my clients who are interested in putting an offer in a house and say, hey, look, there's 8 offers. They're like, oh God, forget it. I'm like, whoa, forget what? Like, that's nothing. 8 offers, we can work with that. I might as well, get in the game. And if I know, I probably have an idea of what kind of offer they're thinking about making. And if they're thinking about making a strong offer, we are definitely going to put our hat in the ring. I don't mind writing the offer. So, but I don't want them to fall in love with the house, because it's obviously a very good chance we're not going to get it. So, number 1 is just don't fall in love with the house. Number 2 is be prepared. The biggest problem we have is people get a little discouraged and they don't complete a pre-approval process, or they, they might have realized that they need to use a different lender. We're going to get into that in a second. um, they kind of take their eye off the ball. And then what do you know? That next day they wake up and the perfect house pops up and they say, "Hey, Craig, let's go see this. This is the house. This is the one." And I say, "Perfect. I'll line that up. Hey, you better get that pre-approval in order." And then it's like a mad scramble. If they can even get it done, it's a scramble to get that pre-approval taken care of. And, in time in this market, if the house is great and there's no delayed showings or anything, then you're going to have to scramble, and that's not ideal. Now, um, in accordance with that, if you're going to go through the trouble of getting your pre-approval ahead of time. So the number one question I'm getting asked all the time is because people are seeing the market and saying, all right, like we need to move. We're definitely going to buy a house. However, considering the market and the rates and everything else, we're just going to kind of wait 4 months. So here's the thing. I don't know what 4 months from now is going to look like. Could be worse. I have no idea. So my message to you is that's fine. I'm in it for the long haul with you, and that's fine. We can kind of wait to see how things shake out. But in the meantime, I cannot tell you the percentage. Like it's got to be like 80% of my clients say that to me. And then next thing you know, it's like a week later, they're looking at a house. It's just the way it goes. Once you kind of start this process and you're in tune with how things are going, you're going to see things you like. You're going to see opportunities. So, you can decide in your head you're going to wait for 4 months. But if you're even within 4 months, I would say even if you're within 6 months, go ahead and get your pre-approval. There's no risk. There's no cost. There's no nothing. But at least you know that you're looking at the right price points. Now, once you get that pre-approval and you're not like doing it because you already found the house and now you're getting the pre-approval. That's the wrong order. Get the pre-approval, then find the house if you have the time. But if you get the pre-approval and you still haven't found a house, number one is it doesn't really expire. Those letters do have a date on them, but the good news is that your lender has all your information. So when let's say you wait 3 months and you go to use it later, and actually we're going to have Todd Mershon, one of my recommended lenders, on here in one of the coming weeks, and he can talk about some of the stuff. But one of the things is if you go ahead and get that pre-approval, so number one, you're going to learn what you have to spend. Number two is your lender has all your information. That way, when 4 months from then, when you actually find a house and you want to get an update to your pre-approval, which doesn't mean much, you're basically going to call the lender and he's going to say, have you had any major changes to your finance, new job, or you lost a job, or you got a raise, or whatever the case may be. Fine, let's take note of that. Let's update some of your documents and whatnot, but he has most of your information, right? You don't have to start from scratch. So that's good news. Number two is if you have the time and you're working with a good lender that offers this, and again, I can always recommend a lender that offers this, is get your pre-approval pre-underwritten. That means that your pre-approval, your whole package goes in front of the underwriters before you ever make an offer. So when we make an offer, we get to hand over a pre-approval that says, not only are these people pre-approved for this money, but it's already been with the underwriters. So it's a much higher level of confidence. I mean, if that is the case and you're actually a strong buyer, you've already been pre-underwritten, you're now competitive with people who have lesser. They might be putting more money down, but they have lesser pre-approvals. Me as a listing agent, if I see something from Bank USA, some generic US big bank, and then I see one from a smaller company, Movement Mortgage, that's the lenders that I use all the time, and I see that on the Movement Mortgage one they've been pre-underwritten, on the other one, Bank USA or whatever, again generic big bank, I know a couple things about that pre-approval. Number one is in the pre-approval process, and most of the banks, again, speaking in generalities here, I don't want to call out any specific bank or anything. You're welcome to work with whoever you would like. But I would say as a general industry practice is the bigger banks don't do these pre-underwriting procedures. In fact, a lot of times, and in my personal experience, recent experience, is that they're actually kind of adhering to dated standards as far as how to get that person qualified. You have to understand that when a lot of people go to a lender to say, hey, we want to get a pre-approval for a house, let's talk in the case of first-time buyers. Their finances are generally in some form of disarray. There's some debt where it shouldn't be. They've got some money saved, but maybe not quite enough, or maybe they actually just have it allocated incorrectly. They have a ton of savings, but they also have a lot of debt. There's all kinds of things like that. And a good strategic lender is going to look at your whole picture and say, here's what I recommend for you. If you're using generic bank USA, they're going to give you some general guidelines. They're going to say, we need to get your debt to income ratio here. Right now it's here. We need to get it here. That standard that they're telling you isn't coming from underwriting. It's coming from a very generic place of, this is generally what works to get people approved. Here's the problem though. Those guidelines are constantly being changed by the government. So in the case of a smaller lender who is pre-underwriting, is we are going through that process already. So we already know that they are in fact pre-underwritten and pre-approved in the eyes of the bank, not just in the eyes of an originator who just like looked at their qualifications. Yep, that checks off. Good. We don't even know if they have verified income. We have a lot of situations where people write in their salary because they know what they get paid. And then we find out that they're hourly. That's not necessarily a showstopper, but it's definitely a consideration. But all of these types of things are things that a strategic lender will help you with. In this market, I cannot recommend highly enough that you get involved in those conversations, because then me as a realtor, I can have those conversations with your lender. I can say, all right, tell me a little bit about their profile, because I want to know what the positives are. All right, they've been pre-underwritten. Great. They have money in reserves. Awesome. I get to go tell the listing agent, hey, look, not only do you see this pre-approval, but it's also pre-underwritten. And if you'd like, you can actually call the lender and ask about my buyers, because they are way overqualified for this property. So things like that are huge in getting offers accepted. If you get, you can go on like, websites. I think it's better.com. I don't even know. But if you go on better.com right now, like you can pump out a pre-approval in literally 5 minutes. You can type in there whatever you want and you'll have a pre-approval for, $1.2 million. But obviously that pre-approval is like basically worth nothing. I mean, you did it yourself. So obviously I'm not saying that whoever watches this would do that in bad faith, but a lot of people definitely will. And I know because they come to me to be the realtor, and I look at that pre-approval. I'm like, we need to get a different pre-approval. I'd like to believe that you have the money to buy this very expensive house, but whether or not I believe you is one question. Number two is the listing agent and the seller are definitely never going to believe this pre-approval. So things like that need to be addressed up front. So again, being very strategic, working with someone who will help you put your best foot forward. Another thing, and I'm seeing a lot more of this recently, the agents that you choose to work with. So if you're the type of person that looks around at houses, you see a house on Zillow and you do that thing where it says, tour this home today, and you contact agent through Zillow, and agent calls you and says, hey, I understand you're interested in this house on Zillow. So I've said many times before, those are paid ads. Those agents that are calling you are paying to be in that position to get that call and to call you back and get your business. I would say generally speaking these days that, most highly productive agents are no longer paying Zillow to be in that spot because it doesn't pay. It used to pay very well. There are agents in this office, myself to some degree. I didn't really go all in like some agents did, but there are agents in this office that literally built their business on that model. So, but what's left there now is very often agents that don't have another source of business. So you are basically dealing with people who can't find a client base and are paying Zillow to be in position to get those calls. That's fine, but you don't know what you're getting. I mean, it's luck of the draw. Like if you, if you wanted to buy a microwave oven on Amazon, and I said, that's fine. How much do you have to spend? $400? All right. And then we took your $400 budget and I just at random handed you a $400 microwave. You'd probably want to know, like, well, wait, is that the best one for $400? It doesn't look like the best one. You don't have to do that. You can choose your realtor. You can choose to work with me or you can choose not to work with me, but at least you get to choose. Like you can read my reviews. You can go on Google, you can go on Facebook, you can go on listen, my face and content are everywhere. You can decide, if you're watching this, obviously, that, but you can decide to work with me or not. But if you're doing the Zillow thing, you don't really get to choose. And that agent that gets that call is expecting to do business with you. So if they, if you say no to them, oh, I didn't understand how this works, they're gonna call you back. I mean, if they're even halfway decent, they're gonna continue to call you back. So, be careful with that. But here's what I'm seeing on the listing side. So I just listed another home, and it's in a very popular area. It's at a very good price point. I will say right now that the price point of like 350 to 550 is the hottest price point. I mean, it's just like anything in that price range just flies off the market immediately. So this is in that price range. And I have, no showings until Sunday, which is something that I typically do. So the open house, especially in this situation, there's kids and a dog involved and everything. So we're trying to kind of consolidate all the showings to a shorter amount of time. And I have these agents calling me saying, I tried to book a showing, but it's saying that there's no dates available for today. And I say, well, yeah, in the listing, it states that there's no showings until Sunday. Did you look at the listing, or did you try to book it the way I asked you to in the listing, which would, clearly state that? And my question, I have to be pretty diplomatic in these situations, and I try to be. If someone's giving me a little bit of grief, I just kind of brush it off. I can tell sometimes when they're newer agents, and I'll just say, hey, do you know how to look for this date? Because you really shouldn't be calling the listing agent to ask when showings are available. You have to understand, when you list a home as a listing agent, that's going to be very popular. And this one is clearly very popular, that we are getting slammed on the phone. And there are legit reasons why someone might call us. They have specific questions. They've reviewed the entire listing, and then they have a question. And actually, I want to hear what those questions are, because I want to address them once and once only, and add that information to listing if I need to. But calling me to ask me, why you can't show it tomorrow when the listing clearly states that showing start in like 5 days, that's not really a good sign. So listen, if that's your buying agent that's doing that, I can't stress enough, so I've probably taken 25 of those calls this week, and that's really startling. But if you hired that person to help you buy a house, how well do you think that process is going to go? Because this is the easy part. We're just talking about booking a showing. What about when you get challenges with, underground tanks and attorney review and, septic systems and, multiple offers and putting together a winning offer? Do you know how well that person does in multi-offer situations? Have you had that conversation with them? Well, how are you going to get our offer accepted, especially if you're not just throwing down a ton of cash? Those types of things. Like, if that person can't read a listing and book a showing properly, to me, it's like, oh my God, like, what else is going on with this agent? And listen, this is an industry where we have so many part-time people, and we have people that, just operate so differently. I mean, there's standards for us to follow, but they're all independent contractors. They can kind of do business however they choose to do it. So, there are realtors that, like myself, who are constantly, taking classes and getting educated and keeping up with changing rules and all this stuff, and making sure that we're compliant minimally, but also just kind of staying on the cutting edge. And then there are agents that, sell 2 or 3 homes a year, and they don't go to any of those classes. And, they wait for their friends to buy or sell, and that's what they do. And they're happy with that. And that's fine. But, in this market, is that really who you want looking for a house for you? That could cost you. So, that's another thing I'd caution you about in this market, is be very careful who you're working with. You got to have a whole team in place. In all of my deals right now, I have 4 pending in this listing that's about to hit. We've had our fair share of challenges in all of them. It's just, transacting real estate is not simple. It never was. It's not supposed to be. But then you add on the layers of emotion and the frantic market, and it's just harder. It's not easier. So, I've put together a team of people that I am very proud to be in business with, from the lender that I work with most commonly to the attorney that I work with most commonly. And in all of my current transactions, I've had to lean on all of them. particularly my attorney, who I absolutely adore, because she is just the best, on all fronts for so many reasons. And I think all my clients who have used her would 100% agree with me. And today we're dealing with a situation that, we have to lean on her. And I just referenced a deal where we, had some challenges, and she, has been fantastic. Well, if I only sell 2 or 3 homes a year, are you confident that I have the best real estate attorney? So it's, those are the things that you definitely want to be conscious of in this market. Selling in the current market, listen, you're going to do well as a seller, but there are caveats. You still have to market it properly. I just told you about a listing that we took with no competing offers after being on the market for 6 months because of the way certain things were handled. And there's a little speculation on our part. And again, I don't want to, on the off chance that, someone who knows the listing I'm talking about sees this and says, is he throwing the other, side under the bus? No, I'm definitely not, because there were some specifics there. But I'm here to tell you that, it happens a lot where things are not quite properly marketed correctly, or, there's ambiguous information or wrong information, or cell phone pictures. For God's sakes, like, this day and age, there's no reason for your agent to be, if you are dealing with a real estate agent and he mentions that he's going to come in and take pictures with his iPhone for your listing photos, no matter what he convinces you that that's okay. And this coming from a former photographer and current real estate agent, it's not okay. It's like $250 for us to get those photos taken. It doesn't matter if the house is 4,000 square feet. There is no excuse for that. But those are the types of things that can cost you big money, because those photos are a huge turnoff to buyers. Buyers will just fly by that listing. You want to generate buzz. You want everyone that sees the present. You have one chance, especially in the first impression, to get that listing out there. And even though it's gonna sell, wouldn't you rather, like, people just are drooling over it than like, I could take it or leave it, and then by the time they check back in, it's gone? Or would you rather have them see it and say, oh wow, that's really nice, and we should definitely get in the mix, and then they'll go see it and hopefully fall in love with it and put an offer in, and then you have multiple offers. There's a huge difference there. And I think, we're seeing more and more things happen as far as, bargain basement type listing process that really cost people money. It is so obvious to us agents. I don't think it's as obvious to the consumer. And if you're coming from a mindset of, I'm going to save a few bucks listing my house, to work with, again, generic discount brokerage, that's going to, they're only charging me, 4% to sell my house. You get what you pay for. The old adage definitely applies here. Not only that, we're only talking about marketing, but again, the knowledge base and the accessibility. My clients that have an active listing, it doesn't matter what happens. They can text me anytime they want. They can call me anytime they want. And if I can't answer at that moment, I will call them right back. You are not going to get that experience with someone who is dealing in volume and working at discount prices. So, it's as I've mentioned many times, I mean, as far as real estate goes, I'm in the Jerry Maguire model. I offer a extremely high level of service, and I want that person, when all is said and done, to say, that was awesome. I know that he worked hard for us at all stages. He was always available to us. We never had any huge moments of stress, because we could always get a hold of Craig and ask him, for guidance, or ask him his advice, or ask him, to explain to us what's happening. That's very often what is needed. Is they're just like, hey, I saw an email come from the attorney, or I shouldn't say the attorney, because I'm not going to explain legal issues, but I saw a request come from the seller, and we're not quite sure, like, how to handle this, or what would be considered standard, or what would you advise as far as negotiating that. Those types of conversations, you want someone that's hands-on and knows you well and knows the situation well. You don't want me catching up on facts like, oh, you know what, I haven't checked my email on your house. Let me see what's going on here. That's not the type of service I offer. So again, you can save a couple $1,000 by going with a discount broker, but you can't expect that that experience is going to be the same. And listen, you could get lucky. You could just have a smooth transaction. You don't get exposed to that. But smooth transactions are like unicorns these days, unfortunately. So, and I do everything I can. I tell my clients up front, I'm going to do everything I can to protect you from the manic sides of this market and the emotional aspects of these transactions. So I do as much as I can to be very hands-on in the transaction, to kind of pre-negotiate things and, set expectations with both my own clients and the listing agent, or vice versa, the buying agent if I'm on the listing side. There's a lot that goes on. So the other thing that's very laughable to us real estate agents is, I think a lot of people think, like, how do realtors earn their money? That's how we earn our money. Like, it's not easy. There's a ton of knowledge that goes into us. There's a ton of communication and documentation and financial considerations and legal considerations and marketing considerations and availability, and all of these things factor into why we get paid the way we do. And if you didn't have agents that were relatively well compensated, when you get a closing, of course the compensation is solid. But the only way that we're able to keep getting closings is for people to choose to keep doing business with us. So in order for me to do that and keep earning business, is to be at the top of my game. So it's pretty much that simple. Again, kind of the Jerry Maguire. I think that reference is getting pretty dated at this point, but it is the kind of the Jerry Maguire model, which Jerry Maguire, got sick of the famous movie with Renee Zellweger and Tom Cruise. The whole model was that he was leaving a giant, sports marketing firm or sports management agent firm to go, focus on like a handful of professional athletes with a high level of involvement with them, personal service. And I would say that's completely how I choose to do business. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, who knows what's going to happen with this market. I do want to say one thing. I was just going to mention this. I know a lot of people that watch this are actually considering being agents. So, I love this job. I absolutely do. It's if you're the type of person that is coming in with a mindset that you are going to work hard, if you have anything other than that mindset getting into real estate, especially in this market, then it's probably not a good choice. If you are the type of person that, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. If you're the type of person that understands that you are going to work very hard in this profession and nothing's going to stop you to succeed, but you are definitely going to keep your head down and work hard, great. You will make a great person in this industry. If you're thinking this is like a decent side hustle and, there's not much to it and a lot of bang for your buck, I would say that's probably a bad mindset coming into this profession, because you're going to get burned. It's relatively cheap to get in, but it's expensive to maintain, and especially if you're actually trying to do business, especially if you get into the trap of starting to pay for leads. We just talked about the, Zillow model. If you're like, you know what, I'll just do the Zillow thing and I'll just get calls occasionally. It's very expensive, like very, very, very expensive. I think the actual price of being, I think that the general consumer would be shocked at what some people pay to be that person on Zillow. I know I've been shocked, because we can actually, as realtors, we can kind of see it, because it's a little bit of a bidding process. So you can kind of see what other people are paying. So like if I chose Clinton and I wanted to be the agent in Clinton that, gets most of the calls, it's like a bidding process. So I can actually see, what it would cost for me to be the number one guy. And it's like staggering numbers. I don't want to get too much into the details, but just trust me. It's like, you can get into territory where it's like, think about your mortgage and double it. That's what it costs monthly. So that is very expensive. So if you're coming in with any premonition that this is like an easy way to get some extra money, I would say it's probably a bad choice. If you're coming in and saying, I'm tired of my current situation, I want a better situation, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes, and not just saying it, but being able to actually do it, then this is a good choice, because this is a unique situation where literally if you stay informed and you are coachable, and you pick a good mentor and a coach, and I know this because I've mentored and coached many agents, um, you will do well. If you can stay humble and stay coachable and stay focused and put in the hours and put in the phone calls and everything else, then you'll do well in this profession. This market shouldn't have any effect on that. But if you're thinking that, you see all these people doing real estate, oh, I know someone that does real estate. Yeah, I don't think they really work all that much. And, they make their own hours and all that. Some of those things are true. But um, as far as it being easy or like not working hard, that is not the case. I mean, I'll be working all weekend. That's not always the case. It just so happens I have a huge open house this Sunday that is going to be a absolute circus, and I have to show some homes on Saturday. There are many weekends where I don't work at all. But again, I'm pretty experienced and I can kind of dictate my hours a little bit better. When you're first starting out, you can throw that out the door because, you pretty much got to take what you can get when you're first starting out. So if you are thinking about getting into real estate, I will put it in the context of this current market. It's not an easy time, but if you are getting in for the right reasons, it really shouldn't matter. So if you do have any questions about that, please, feel free to hit me up and message me or text me or email me or, hit me up on any of the platforms and I'll see it. But I'm happy to talk to anyone that's interested in getting into it. But it is an interesting time to get in. I think that there are a lot of brokerages out there. I'm just basing this off of my experience and having this open house coming this weekend and all these agents that are calling me with like really bad questions. My guess is that a lot of them are part-time. Usually I can look them up. I know they're inexperienced, but my guess is that they're probably part-time, but also they're just not getting good guidance from their brokerage on some of these things. That's the other thing is I would be very careful in picking your brokerage. Obviously, I would advocate for Keller Williams, and I'm happy to talk to anyone about the Keller Williams model and why that makes sense. But one of the things that Keller Williams has always made very clear is we do have an extensive training, coaching, mentoring program, which not every brokerage does. Some brokerage are just like, we'll just save you money. We'll be the cheapest in terms of agents, because those big checks that you think us realtors get, we have to split those with our brokerage to cover a variety of things, obviously, to run a brokerage. And those splits are pretty big. So when you see, if you've ever seen a check that goes to your realtor at closing, that's not my money. That's like some of it's my money and some, what percentage of it is complicated. There's a lot of variables that go into it, but that's not my money. That's everyone's money. That's the broker and, all my business expenses and my taxes. So like, if that's what you're thinking, like, how can I just save the most money each transaction and avoid that whole split thing? I'm just going to join a brokerage that's like, $400 per transaction. You're going to get no coaching. That's the problem. So that's the trade-off. So if you have something that where the brokerage has some revenue because they're splitting with us, then you have these great things in place. So all of those things are considerations if you're thinking about it. But if you're thinking about it, you want to work hard, you want to learn, you want to be humble, then it's a great profession because it's extremely rewarding, in my opinion. Obviously, if you ask 100 realtors, you're going to get 100 different answers. But in my opinion, coming from corporate world, this profession is, everything I could have ever asked for in terms of all of those things. I like working hard if I think I'm going to be rewarded for it. And, thus far in my career, that has definitely been the case. So, but yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. I have touched on this before, and I'm happy to do it again if anyone has any more specific questions. But I think I'm going to wrap it at this point. This market's going to be like really interesting to watch over the next few months, and I'll just kind of keep showing up here and taking any questions that anyone might have. But yeah, let's see what happens. Your guess is as good as mine. Maybe not quite as good as mine, but I would say no professional in the field has like a definitive answer as to like what's going to happen with this market. So I think we all have our theories, but for the most part, it's unknown. So let's all take this ride together and hang in there. And I'll try to give you as many crazy stories as I have because there's new ones every week, and that's about it. All right. So hope you're all doing well. We'll see you all soon. Thanks for tuning in and take care. Bye-bye.